Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
A geek for fun.
Indeed. And Alfie has picked our review topic today. Alfie, what are we discussing this time around?
Well, we have decided to discuss something quite supernatural and blah, I won't do the whole horribly stereotypical Dracula voice. We're going to be doing the most recent interpretation of Bram Stoker's famous character, the Prince of Darkness himself, Count Dracula.
Yep, indeed we are. So this is like, if I didn't know going into it, by the end of the first, not even the end of the first episode, but halfway through the first episode, I've been like, oh yeah, this is either Stephen Moffat, or someone was like, man, that's Stephen Moffat with the Sherlock and stuff. He seems to be doing really well. Maybe we should try to do some of that stuff. And I watched a lot of Stephen Moffat Doctor Who. I watched all of Sherlock at one point in time. And I've got my take. All right? Stephen Moffat. And it's hard because it says Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat, so it's hard to know who did what. But I'm gonna blame it all on Moffat. Stephen Moffat is a guy who's actually a really talented writer, and he's got a really good sense of just getting a take on a character and having some really brilliant ideas that kind of all connect together and really, really work. And then he always takes it just a step too far and loses the fuck out of me. Not just regardless, wherever he's at, he always does it to me. Because, I made the joke last week when you announced that we were doing this of, oh man, let's hope it's better than Jekyll. And the thing is, I really, really liked Jekyll when Moffat did that back in 06, 07. Until the last episode. And you know what? I was really digging this take on Dracula until the last episode. My God, those first two episodes are fantastic. They're some of the best Dracula writing I've ever seen. Absolutely incredible. Sheer force of nature, just great performances, great writing, super fun, super cool, really unique and innovative stuff to do with Dracula. And then you get to the last, the cliffhanger of the second episode, and you're like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I'm so invested and so interested in more. And then he just loses the fuck out of me, slowly but surely throughout that episode. I was so with it right until Renfield walked into the goddamn building. And then it was just from there, it just was a straight decline. And I fucking lost it by the end of by the end of the final episode. And that's so disappointing because, man, I was ready to just love this. I was ready to rediscover my love for Moffat, but he did the same shit to me. He lost me on the ending.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of that specifically as the general takeaway. Is as this was coming out, a lot of people were just like, this is defining, this is incredible, this is fantastic, I'm so on board, from hardcore fans to just casual BBC viewer base. And then when it got that final episode came out, everyone immediately was just like, but me, I don't know, I guess I'm just a little bit more dyed in the wool Moffat maybe I'm just as fucking stupid as him, because he's never gone too far for me. Which is fuck, because he goes so far, right? But like for me, I've been on board for this. Like again, like I said, those first 2 episodes I do think are the stronger aspect. But I think once you get to 3, and it turns into something else. And I think what's interesting here is this is the first media related to Dracula I've ever seen post this that's adapted it. Is this just turns from a Bram Stoker adaptation into a Helsing adaptation, which is fucking insane that this is happening. It's just like when you get to spoilers for the sake of everything. I think if you want to check out this series, Ian's recommendation, at least the first 2 episodes are really good. It's only 3-episode series. You probably should go just check it out from this point. But for like the whole thing of like the descendant of Helsing, the modern institution he's trapped in, Dracula in this setting where he has to deal with like the regular theory of life, but like he's almost more effective because people just don't give a shit. All of that kind of stuff is kind of thrown in Helsing, which I was really surprised to see. And what I like about it is, as crazy as it does get, as like if just absolutely what the hell is going on, there's so many twists and turns and subversions, it's still, if you break it down, follows the book really fucking closely in like the thematic beats and like what characters happen and like the meaning of thing, like to the fact that the episodes are broken up into basically the 3 acts of the book, where you've got the Jonathan Harker goes to Castle Dracula, then he's on the boat, which I'm very glad that finally got an extended adaptation, because we never fucking do anything on the boat.
I mean, Bram Stoker didn't do anything with the boat. The boat's like a chapter.
I know, but it's Dracula on the sea, man. That's like fucking awesome. Throw a pirate in there or something. We just get. I know the ship captain like tied himself to the thing because he would not stop it even if he would get killed by Dracula. That's a fucking baller ass story. Like we just kind of move over it even there, and then you get to the final bit. When they're in the city, and then obviously we don't go back to Dracula's Transylvania to go kill him like in the book, but everything in there is still kind of keeping to some of the bits and pieces. So I really do respect the idea of doing all right, we're going to do the adaptation, and we're going to take the structure, but that's it. Everything else is free game, even the time period, and like what characters are still around and all of this, and the focus on blood. All of it really, really struck me, and I found myself rolling with the things do become looser and not as tightly structured once we do get to that final episode. But I also respect it a hell of a lot because it's something I think a lot of writers wouldn't have the balls to do.
I mean, maybe. I guess my problem isn't really with the choice to like do the time skip and stuff, because I actually, you get to the end of that second episode and that is like a holy shit kind of moment. I thought that was pretty cool to work that in there. It's a very Doctor Who ending. The guy grew up watching Doctor Who, wrote and ran Doctor Who for years, and I think that's just in his blood now. I really do like that, and the beginnings of that I think are fantastic. All the way until Renfield shows up, I think is a really interesting premise, and I think that's where they should have just... I'm not saying that I would have ever really accepted the way things end up for Dracula here, but I think I would have been willing to accept it a lot more if we had more time with that. A lot of that stuff feels rushed. I feel like, especially just the silliness of Renfield showing up. Like, we've got this secret organization that's been built specifically to keep Dracula locked up if he ever returns, yada yada yada. I thought all that was like really interesting, really cool. And I feel like that's just where it should have ended, because the thing about this Dracula is he's more dangerous the more limitations you put on him. Like the boat, for example. All they have to do is stay in that fucking circle of the Bible pages. And they can't help it. He's just there toying with them the whole time, and he just gets so, like, just drastically more scary when he's like that, and everything about him just gets worse and worse and worse, and I quite like it. And so, you know, you really could have just left him in this, like, perfectly designed thing that's meant to keep him locked up, and I really feel like that was maybe the intent, because they introduce all these characters and all this idea of, like, oh, he'll be fed humanely and stuff, and, like, that could have been really cool if that were the rest of the episode and it, like, left things off for the future, and then maybe in another episode or maybe a season 2 it got to the point where we did. Not saying I'd ever be okay with that, because they're just choices I do not agree with, but we get to the end of that episode and I'm like, man, that just everything feels so rushed. Like, I felt like Lucy should have been an entire episode unto herself. I feel like the like whole conversation, like that whole section in his studio apartment, wherever the fuck it is at the end, that should have just been an entire episode. That should have basically just been a bottle episode in my mind. It just, everything in that final episode feels like an entire season unto itself, and for some reason they only got approved for 3 episodes.
Now that is a problem. I 100% do agree with this taking on, like, the Sherlock format, which I think benefits Sherlock Holmes a lot more than it does Dracula, where Sherlock starts off as short stories, individual. You have an episode of Sherlock and it's a case, and you just basically you have that format to work with, but it almost structures itself. It suits a smaller, tighter, focused format. Whereas something like Dracula, where you need to build up suspense and then you need to release that tension, like that suspense, and then kind of there's an ebb and there's a flow to how you want to utilize him. Sometimes you don't want him out on screen at all, but if you've got this short period of time you've got to work with, you do need to kind of package in as much as that as you can. I think it's amazing that those first 2 episodes do that as well as they can, with him essentially being the protagonist. But once you get to the 3rd episode and he does kind of take a little bit of a backseat, there's this sense that they just had so many ideas for this. I mean, the fact that there's a huge time skip in the middle of the 3rd episode itself, from where we start one place and then we start the other, and now he's got his apartment, Renfield's his errand boy, which, I mean, again, as much as it's like, oh yeah, this is where things get different, making Renfield basically Dracula's Alfred is one of the fucking coolest
ideas. I love that. That was cool.
And he's in the car doing the crossword, but so like it's one of those, maybe we've got like a good friend. It's just like Dracula is God, Dracula is God. And I'm like, that's such a subtle, super fucking creepy, terrifying, like, dark side might as well be scribbled on that shit.
And then he like eats the fly. I thought, yeah, that was a great scene.
But all those aspects, I do agree. I would have liked an episode or 2, or like, again, a whole other season focusing on those aspects. I definitely think you're onto something there, where maybe the format that they kind of popularized doesn't suit this character as much as they might have expected it to.
I mean, what's weird is, like, Sherlock's gone on several seasons, or series in the British vernacular. Sherlock's had several seasons, and I don't, like, even if you don't want Dracula to be exactly like Sherlock as, you know, potential to go on forever kind of thing, even if you do want it to be a very limited thing, then I don't feel like it was written for that. You know, like, I feel like if you just wanted it to be 3 episodes, then they really should have completely restructured those episodes. Because as cool as those first 2 episodes are, if you want your big revelation on Dracula to be like, I've been around 500 years and yada yada yada, you need to spend more time where you're going to have that character end up, as opposed to developing that character, if you're only going to do it in 3 episodes. Because that's the thing about this. There's no room for a second season, right? Like, this is it. This is all you're getting. Like, another season would just feel like a complete betrayal to the story this does manage to tell. Especially the ending conclusion, right? So, like, there's no way to do another season after this, and there's just so much packed in that final episode that it feels like it needed it. So, like, there's all that. That's, like, my biggest complaint as far as the formatting goes. All that being said, even if we had gotten a second season and it had led to this same endpoint, I still don't think I would have liked it. If this was 2 seasons and season 2 was just like all this craziness with him existing in the modern world and getting his apartment and all that, I'd probably been like, man, I really like season 1, but season 2 kind of sucked. Because, like, I like the Renfield apartment thing. I like the servant. I really, really liked the take with Lucy. I thought that was a really interesting way to use that character. With the idea of Dracula feeding on her over and over again. The thing I did not like was the just complete leaps in logic. Again, you've got this institution that has been created from its inception to capture and contain Dracula, and they screw up because they just make the Wi-Fi password Dracula. They give him an iPad so he can contact Renfield, and then they let him go because of a lawyer that threatens to call the cops. They don't have, like, government connections or anything, really? Fucking,
like,
really?
But man, because, like, think about it, right? Like, we see that trope in fiction all the time. The system that was created specifically to stop this one threat, and they're here all the time, be it like fucking against Superman or some shit, right? That's a constant in fiction. We've always got it. But, like, for Dracula, what the fuck are they doing the rest of the 100 years? And it's like, well, shit, yeah, that's a big fucking expense. No one's gonna fucking keep that shit on the payroll. It probably gets, like, it's heavily just figured that, well, they just managed to secure some weapons contracts funding and all of that shit, but, like, no one's gonna admit this is really a thing because it's a whole other big things, and probably a lot of people in charge who made this have all long died, and because they kept it a secret, no one fucking in power knows this is a thing now to fucking validate it. And again, one of these things is they have these preconceptions of Dracula. And we know this isn't like a world where vampire fiction does exist, because you get that cool scene like at the very beginning of the 3rd episode where he's like in that woman's house. So they've got these ideas of like what they're expecting him to be. So like, oh yeah, we'll give him modern technology. That'll probably really freak him out. And then the fact that he's so lit, okay, thanks for the iPad. I figured out the Wi-Fi password. Like, wait, what? What? Hold on. No, stop. No, stop. I found that really refreshing, honestly. I do think I maybe would have liked to spend a little more time there and then have that reveal that he's been playing Mubson the entire time. But I think the concept of you completely underestimate the situation you've been planning for all these years of, because you've been planning for so long, you've completely gone in circles and kind of underestimated it because you've overestimated it, kind of thing.
No, I like the subversion. I like the idea that he just gets out, and I think I would have, again, this is how you fix it by making it longer, right? What if you have this whole episode with him, like, getting captured, and because, like, that fucking scene where he's like, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have a roof over my head. Oh, I noticed. Fucking tears down the wall. That was a big dick energy kind of move. But like this whole cat and mouse game with him getting captured, and then he's in this thing, and it's like perfectly designed against him, and all this stuff. Like that whole reveal of Renfield and everything would have felt so much more satisfying as a subversion if it hadn't been played for laughs, and instead, like, that was how you end the episode. Is he's sitting there playing on the iPad, and he cracks the Wi-Fi and just, like, smiles. Or, like, he's sitting there playing on the iPad, cracks the Wi-Fi, and then figures out, like, Google's fucking, the law firm, you know? Like, if that was the way the episode ended or some shit, that would have been so much... Like, that just would have felt... It would have felt more earned. That's the thing. Whether or not it works on concept doesn't matter because it doesn't feel earned. Like, yes, he's got memories of... or he's got, like, some knowledge of this technology and stuff because of draining the one guy before he went in that woman's house and everything. But, like, it feels like way too much, way too fast happens. There's a fine line between subversion and rushing things. You know?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a very valid point. I do want to kind of bring up because I think that's very integral to this take on Dracula, which was curious about how you thought about it. The idea that blood is like the currency, like it's not just food.
I fucking adored that. That was brilliant. Blood is lives, and it's like as literally as it possibly can be taken. I thought that was fantastic.
The idea of the reason why he wants to go to London is because he wants more intelligent people to eat is just fucking god tier. Like, that is the kind of shit where, like, Dracula is molding, like he will build up societies just so his livestock will taste better. He's just so fucking, I hope that sticks with the character I never want another take that's related to the blood as just food, because I think that adds so much darker things to it, because then you get into like the ideas of where he's feeding on Helsing, and that whole episode they're playing chess, and it's kind of like left in like, oh well, is this before, is this after, what's going on? And then you get the reveal that he's been feeding her this entire time, and this is just like the mindscape-esque kind of thing she's perceiving as that happens. The horror of that, the kind of weird, almost like beauty of that at the same time, I think is such a cool thing that marries itself perfectly with vampires as a concept. And it brings them to almost like, it gives them a little bit more identity rather than just another monster that kills people, because they're tying them even more directly to blood than any other thing in fiction, which I think is like very natural.
No, you're right. I absolutely adored that. I like how well it plays, you know, especially the "you are what you eat" thing. I thought that was really funny to throw that in. It's like, I've been trying to tell people for years, you are what you eat. Dracula is responsible for every diet fad ever.
He's always that guy.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was great. I like how it sets him apart, because like we see other undead in here, but this is what makes him the lord of the undead. All the other ones just want another meal. That's all they ever care about. Dracula, because he comes from like this noble background, understands the importance of I guess not self-control, but understands the importance of fine dining, understands the importance of a refined palate. There we go.
He's the Hannibal Lecter of vampires.
Yes, exactly. I thought that was fantastic. And the way it like clearly not only influences like what he knows, but like influences his personality, I thought was a really, really cool take, because I really liked the moment where he goes, oh, if I hadn't done that, I would have shown up to England with all the social capabilities of a Russian sailor. I thought that was so cool. I thought that was a great idea.
It lets him. It marries. I think it's why, if you were writing this, the natural point you would go is like, okay, what happens if he's a modern day? It's just like that's the intrinsic endpoint of that concept of Dracula, is where he's shaped by his environment. It's like, okay, what does he look like here and now? I think it's a character. If you've got that, you can do almost endless stories with him, because you can put him in any situation, any fictional world, and he changes immediately to match that world. It's like, if this Dracula drinks from Goku, he's gonna really want to fight people.
You can't fucking help yourself, can you?
I mean, man, I'm just telling you, it's something that popped into my head immediately. Like, all this stuff, I think, is really, really solid. And I think
I'm just imagining this Dracula like fighting in Baba's tournaments.
Like he'd fit. He's got the puns down. Toriyama would be all about
the
it.
drinking puns. Like, they do the moment, and I do truly love the moment. Someone needs to do a supercut. Someone needs to do a supercut of "I never drink wine." I love that to death. That is one of the greatest lines in fiction. Is that from the original book, or is that just from the first book?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it's from the book. Okay.
From the original book as well.
Yeah,
it's so I think Roger Ebert said is like, it's not a Dracula if it doesn't have that line.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's such a good one. No, like, I never drink wine, and then it's like, no, let's just make that the character. It's like, is Bill drunk? Yeah, you could say that. Oh, that was so funny. Oh, my friend, you look positively drained. You don't drink wine. Oh my god, they get so many in there. It's so good.
And I think it really helps to not humanize him, but I think it's really interesting in this take of Dracula how casual his relationship with murder is. Like, this dude just is fucking, like, he's one of the first times you can really tell that he's done this for so many fucking years. He's actively trying to entertain himself to keep from, like, falling asleep, from just going through the motions of, like, killing people. He deliberately kind of has games with people, throwing things off. He's like entertaining himself as he's going on. All of this really does help you give this idea that this is an immortal, but also an immortal who is kind of stuck in his ways, and you can imagine that he's been doing almost the same jokes as well the entire time. Is why he's got the timing so down. Is he's not even finding them funny anymore. He's just doing it like he did this after the first 200 years, and then that got bored. But like he hasn't figured out anything better, so we just kind of like keep finding new and new situations to do it.
No. You know what it is? Is like he's just sitting there and he's like, oh man, they said this. I gotta remember this reply for the next time someone does that, because that's gonna be so good.
And then like 50 years pass, like he's the ultimate dedicated to the bit. Like, you gotta respect him for that. Then he fucking sticks the landing for all of that.
I know, right?
Which I thought was really, 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 really cool. In informing him as a unique take on the character that is suited a little bit more to a protagonist role than just because like that's the mistake that some adaptations make, right? Is they decide, how can we make Dracula fit into a role that has more focus? Like, we got to sympathize him. This goes the role as, all right, we're gonna add more to him, but we're not gonna sympathize him. We're gonna make him more horrible than possible. But like kind of dealing with how that then turns into him being just pathetic. Once you get behind the, like with most villains, right? Once you get behind the ultimate veneer of Lex Luthor, he's a really sad, small, petty man. And once you get behind the veneer of this Dracula, he's still just as barbaric as he ever was, no matter how cultured he tries to get. And he's mostly just really, really fucking lonely.
No, I thought that was great. And like, yeah, he's got just this twisted sense about him, like that moment where there's the undead baby in
Oh yeah.
in that box in the first episode, and Dracu's like, I've never seen it work with one so young before. I'm gonna keep it around, see what happens with that. I hope I'm not getting sentimental. Like, holy shit, he took a turn. He took such a turn there. That was crazy. And like, you know, that is somehow more intimidating than the scene where he goes to feed the baby to someone, you know? Like, holy shit.
Even then, that one's still just...
Oh, no, that's like where he's like scary horrifying. I'm more impressed by the humorously horrifying, you know? Like, there's something to, like, the Jason Voorhees or the Jonathan Crane, the sadistic, I like torturing and murdering people. There's something always terrifying about that, certainly. But then there's like the other side of it. It's like the Joker, I had one and I lost it. The Joker, the Freddy Krueger one, where it's like, oh yeah, no, I really like killing and torturing people, but also I like to make jokes while I do it. It's just it adds this extra level of like, it's not even about the thrill, it's just about the fun of it at that point. And that's the part that really got me. And like, you're right, there's so much going on for him there that's really, really interesting. I particularly like the first episode where he takes Jonathan to the roof and has him look at the sun, and he just asks him to describe it. And you get such a fantastic payoff for that when you do bring him to the future. And he does get to see the sun again for the first time in centuries. I thought that was fantastic.
And that's one of those things like Interview with a Vampire did it, and it was fantastic. And a lot of things that have vampires who are old enough to like that you follow from the past who then end up in modern day is kind of like the ultimate like what we do in the shadows is still probably the funniest one because it's just so fucking just like, whoa, look at that, it's pretty neat, huh? As I'm watching like a fucking 4 EP YouTube video of it. So that's the crowning one. But like this I thought was really, really, really powerful, like on the other end of that spectrum of like, yeah, you've almost you get a tangible sense for like like a lot of times when you get like vampires, it's like, oh yeah, what's the fucking big deal? It's a immortal life and you get to be cool and like, yeah, everyone loves vampires, they're sexy, mysterious, etc. This did a good job of showing that Dracula really enjoys who he is and how he is, but also say like literally no one else and even him wants this because it's fucking horrifying. Like how they show the process of when like Jonathan's nails are just like falling off. Mm-hmm. The fly goes across his eye and then into it. When you got fucking Lucy cremated, mm-hmm. and it's just like, don't let them burn you. It hurts. Like shit, that will stick with me for the rest of my fucking life.
Okay, you brought up the Lucy thing, and that is something I want to talk about because I think Stephen Moffat might like legit have a fear of cremation because I just immediately think of the Heaven Sent episode of Doctor Who where it's like, don't cremate me.
I think that's definitely something to bring up.
Right. But like the Lucy thing legitimately confuses me just on like a lore level. And again, this kind of goes to like, I like the idea, but I don't think that it has the proper time for the execution. Why isn't Lucy ever going to look beautiful again? Because we clearly see that Dracula began to look more like what he sees himself as after presumably years of not eating. And then he eats Jonathan and he gets young again and handsome again. Lucy got burnt after she undied. Dracula got burnt after he was already a vampire. The clear implication, at least to me, and maybe this is me implanting too much stuff from other vampire media I've seen, but I don't think so. I think it's implied visually within the piece. Eating people should fix her, right?
Yeah, that was the question I had as well. And the only kind of explanation I've had for it is because throughout that episode, you've got quite a few scenes of when we finally get this is the thing that's been seeded for the whole thing, like, what does Dracula see in the mirror? And he sees his true self. You could interpret it, and I don't think this is handled too well, because if it is the case, then it's not clear enough, that he means you will always look like this. Is he's talking about, like, you will always see yourself like this. But then we see Lucy's perspective, and she sees herself fine until it's pointed out to her. So, like, I guess maybe after the realization, everything like that, I definitely am with you. I think that's way too muddy. There should have been a lot clearer on what they meant. If they did want to make it that was only Dracula, they could have said, like, it will take you 500 years or something to get good enough at using the blood and drinking it properly to be able to fix yourself, so it's might as well be forever, or something along those lines could have made it a little clearer. I definitely do think it is one of those things where they didn't explain that aspect of it well enough, which is a shame, because, like, the general idea of it is really, really good.
No, yeah, see, that's the thing I like, is that's kind of the interpretation I had, but yeah, Lucy seeing herself as fine just doesn't work. And that's the problem, is like, okay, so maybe she sees herself as fine because she's not mentally prepared for it, and then she finally realizes, and then she'd see herself like that, but maybe that would come after she drinks someone for the first time. But she doesn't, because she drinks someone and looks fine to herself, because she drinks the guy that cremated her. It's just like, I understand, you know, you and I get YouTube comments and stuff on our stories where it's like, this isn't exactly clear, and we kind of feel like, oh, come on, you idiot, or really, you're nitpicking that tiny a detail. But I feel like this is more than that. This goes as like a visual dissonance between what you're saying and what you're showing. And it creates confusion for what is a really important part of the story. Particularly like, okay, so Lucy looks like that no matter what. Let's say that she drinks people, and to the outside viewer, she will look beautiful again, but every time she looks at herself, that's all she'll ever see. Okay. Then why does she see herself differently at first? That's the dissonance there. And so I think the move would have been to have her, like, show up looking much more depressed, looking much sadder and everything, and then basically do the reverse of the selfie thing. Like, she realizes she's recovered a little bit since she drank the guy at the funeral home, and then maybe she drinks Alex and recovers completely at that point. But then, you know, she finally sees she's working on getting a selfie, and when she snaps the photo is when she suddenly becomes hideous again. You know, so maybe that's the way to have done it, because it just, as is, it didn't feel very clear.
And I wonder how much of that was, all right, we got to wrap this up now. Which is, again, it's a shame, because that is something you could have been like, you could have had the whole episode be about Lucy in like a season 2 or something, and really delve into that and kind of give that the idea it has. Because again, I really like what they do with her, because again in the book you've kind of got the thing where, like, everyone, she's got like the 3 gentlemen suitors and everything, but then every other adaptation since then is like taken that, okay, well, that means she's just very promiscuous. And this kind of doesn't go there in the sense of she's super fucking horny. it's there is that, but it's not the focus. The main thing is that she's just bored, in very much the same way that Dracula is, and it's a very millennial bored. It's a very modern, life is superficial kind of thing, and like you're part of that culture and you're embracing that culture, but you're also extremely fucking aware of how hollow this all is. The very opening scene we're introduced to it, and like it does the visual thing with like all the hearts, very much does see like, oh, this is what a modern vampire looks like, where you're draining blood, you're draining attention, and that's what you want, and that's what feeds you and survives you, is like the influencer as the vampire. I'm like, that's a really fucking interesting, topical, on point take. That I think a lot of people are actually experiencing, like the fucking blowback of that. So all of that is really interesting. The idea that she's just completely not. Again, the fucking scene in the graveyard with the kid, and then when he follows her home, that is just like really, really fucked up. And then Dracula's just like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna just kill a small child. Like, all of that is really, really good. So I'm not gonna say like, oh yeah, the final episode is even worth watching or anything. I definitely think that some of my favorite stuff is in that. It is just there's just so much in such a small time that it's underselling a lot of the great ideas there.
No, I agree with you. Like, I really like a lot of what's going on in this. The third episode does have some great stuff. Like Renfield, you promised me plans of world domination, Master. I'm like, okay, that I want to see. What's Dracula's plan to take over the world? Particularly this Dracula, because he doesn't seem like the world domination type. But like what you said earlier about like, no, he wants to raise up society in order to have a better meal. I think that's great. That's so
Dracula makes world peace.
Yeah.
Just to fucking be able to feed a more mentally healthy people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was also good. Like you mentioned the boat episode being fantastic. No, the boat episode is great, particularly if you were just gonna, if this had tried to be a more faithful adaptation of the novel, and it was just like, okay, every chapter is an episode. Even if it's a short chapter, we're going to turn it into episode length. That could be a really interesting way to do a limited series, you know? And turning the boat into a whole episode and like this game of cat and mouse, I thought that was all really, really cool. Obviously this isn't faithful because we got like nun Helsing and shit like that. But it was a cool idea. It was a really fun, cool idea. Excuse me. Let's talk about her a bit. What did you let's talk about them as separate characters. What did you think of, what was her name? Anna Van Helsing?
Yeah, Agatha, I think.
Agatha Van Helsing. Yeah.
I really, really, really like her performance. I think there's such a great comedic timing to that, while also keeping it very competent, which I thought made it very, very unique. Because sometimes, again, the main thing this is drawing on is Helsing, the series, which has the female Van Helsing kind of like to the fact where like the scene where she's like holding out the cut on her hand and flicking at him is like pulled directly. Like there's no fucking way they didn't watch that when they made this. If it is, it's a completely crazy coincidence. But then, so they've got that, and the idea of this confident, dark, obsessed person who's like really, really got this bleak sense of humor, but almost you have to be when you're dealing with shit like this. It almost is really good because it helps keep people at ease when they would otherwise be panicking when she's like doing this. A lot of it feels calculated, but also I think is good in that she's got all these plans and she's got this confidence. But at the same time, she is really out of her depth. She's got she's good, but she's just not good enough because the people around her are failing her, and that's what Dracula can use against her. That's what Dracula can manipulate, etc. All of that I thought was really, really good. I thought the idea of turning the main conceit of the book, which is like these are all journal entries, and getting that to be like kind of the framing device for the first episode of Jonathan telling us the story where she's interviewing him. All of that was really solid. But then again, she helped play the reveal later on, where it's just like, oh my god, no, this is the first time you've told us a story. Like all of that, I thought was really, really good. And then her dynamic when we see her at the end is probably the thing where I think the most iffy on. But as long as she's still alive, I thought she was really, really fantastic.
Yeah, no, I thought she was great. I love the take on her. It's funny to realize it's apparently aping something else. But hey, maybe if they made it that obvious, maybe that makes it okay. The moment from her I really, really liked was just the like kind of, I don't know what to call it. The begrudging. Okay, you've got that old phrase. Some are born great. Some become great. Some have greatness thrust upon them. I think she's the character that really does fall into that third. Is she's kind of like you're introduced to her and she goes like, oh yes, I'm like many women of my time, trapped in a loveless marriage. That tries to keep up appearances. I really like that. And then as the series goes, she gets more and more committed. She gains faith. She becomes adversarial because she does genuinely want to help people. But at the same time, she never expected to be in this type of position. And it's just like she's begrudgingly letting herself save the world and realizing everything that's costing her along the way. Like, I fucking love the line. It's like, you look sick, and she goes, yes, I'm dying, but we've more important things to worry about, or some shit like that. I thought that was so good. It's perfect. It's such a good take on the Van Helsing archetype, because Van Helsing has been so many things at this point. It's ridiculous.
And one of my favorite moments for her, which I think is such an interesting take, is where she finds out the cross works, and she fucking is just exuberant and like almost on the verge of tears, and she's like, yes, God exists, and just like the ultimate affirmation, and like everyone's like, just, what are you talking about? This is evil. This is proof of like things. Like, yes, but for something to be unholy, that means that things must be holy. Like that's such a cool like fucking finding something in the darkness that everyone else is too preoccupied to think in, but because she's critical, she's the one who isn't blindly in faith. She's the one who has these crises. She's the one who's trying to find logical reasons. Dracula is the best argument she's ever seen for God is real. Simply is one of the fucking coolest things that I wish more things like, because yeah, you're right, like obviously we find out a lot of Dracula, like the explanation for why Dracula's scared of crosses I think is fantastic, but it's also like, if you were to apply this to actual vampire fiction where it's like it's a legitimate like physical response, I think that would be just as interesting, having more characters like that, kind of like, well shit, this must mean that is a thing. Mm-hmm. Like if that actually works, then holy
that's
shit.
The joke I've had for the longest time. It's like, okay, well, crosses kill vampires. Well, I guess that means that Christians are right. Like, shit. Sorry, checkmate, atheists.
Yeah, exactly, right? You know,
I don't know. There's actually a cool like fan theory. It's like that kind of does tie into is it's not necessarily that the cross is the proof of holiness. It's all the faith and like metaphysical energy that is put into it as a symbol. So like you can, he has that line where like, I can't wait to meet some atheists. Well, like he might have trouble depending on which atheist he eats. Picking up a copy of God is Dead or the fucking Evolution of the Species or some shit. I thought that was such a cool little bit. So, like, I really, really like how that all plays out. I think, again, like, I hate talking about this because every problem I have with it goes back to that third episode. There wasn't, like, anything significant I had to say about the first two. Like, my complaint for the first two episodes before I saw the third was, man, this is all really cool, but still, I really want someone to actually adapt Bram Stoker's Dracula and do it 100%. But, this was still fine as it is. But then by the time you get to the third episode, I really like Agatha Van Helsing. I really felt it was cheap as shit to do the fucking great grandniece bullshit. Oh, I hated that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like that is a natural extension of the focus on blood. And the idea that blood is lives. Because then you get into the question like, well, how does that affect legacies? How does that affect bloodlines? And then the idea that she can only become that when she drinks Dracula's blood, who has drank her blood, and it's kind of like a thing like, you're right, it is silly, it is kind of goofy, but I'm also kind of like this. The moment we've got Dracula in the castle and we've got him like to Harker is like, and I will absorb you. I'm like, all right, you can throw whatever at me at that point. Yeah. It's like, the tone, I think, does justify it for me. I do think they maybe leaned in it a little bit too far. I think just having her influence
I think
her
having
modern...
her played by the same actor was like a bridge too far.
Yeah, that's true. But I think at the same
especially
time,
if you're going to do the moment, especially if you're going to do the moment where she gets the where she gets to talk to her, essentially her past self. Especially then, I thought it was particularly unneeded to have the same actress at that point.
Yeah, I do think you're right, but I wonder if that is just like the production, right?
I do swear the BBC has like four actors and like 50 wigs.
Yeah, like legit. It is one of those things that just like it's more cost effective if it's just why do we need to hire another actress? Especially if we're going to have this be 3 episodes where we're just going to have one cast member that's consistent throughout these 3 productions. That does feel to me very BBC.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So that kind of like irked me about her, but then just in general, Zoe doesn't earn it. Zoe is banking on all the stuff Agatha did, but even though they're connected and everything, Zoe doesn't earn the ultimate defeat of Dracula and such. Because we don't spend enough time with her, and the time we do spend with her, she's just like sitting in a hospital bed, getting lectured by the more interesting character.
And then she just becomes the more interesting. Like she effectively just dies as a character by the time she walks in that room. She's just Agatha 100%, who has possessed this dying girl. Like there is no trace of her after that point. Which I feel like you could have had it be like a cool, like, okay, they figured out how to beat Dracula because she can hear Agatha, and she's had like a couple of interactions where Agatha's told her like a key weakness, told her some of this stuff, but now it's up to her. Now she has to wing it. She has to do all of this herself. Agatha can't do it. The fact that Agatha can basically just turn on and take control of her body and then have like a speech to Dracula is what really kind of undersells Zoe as a character. She just doesn't become a character. She's just a plot device that can keep Agatha around.
Yeah, exactly that. And here's the thing that really bothers me about it all. Okay? Agatha becomes a fucking vampire by the end of the goddamn second episode. You didn't need to bring in this ancestral connection if you wanted to keep the actress around. She just becomes a vampire, and she's like, you've got this Jonathan Harker Foundation that's set up to keep Dracula and also humanely keep him alive. How interesting would it have been if they knew how to humanely keep a vampire alive, because they had one.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good take.
Yeah, that just works so much better with what they're doing, I think. Because, like, you've got Jonathan, who's, like, almost about to become a vampire. Like, he's right on the verge of it before Dracula kills him off. And then, you got Agatha, who knows she's becoming. If she does, like, it seems that whether or not you become a vampire or just remain an undead depends entirely on how damn engaging of a character you are.
But I mean, that's just like fiction, right? That's
right.
Always the case.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought, I don't know, that one really, I think, irked me the most out of the Agatha Zoe thing. And then there's just like we talked about how the lore doesn't make a ton of sense by the time you get to like the Lucy thing, and it does just feel like a time crunch. But then there's just like the thing that made me just go, what the fuck? And that was the son. I have no earthly conception why the son doesn't kill him. Like, I know they explain it. They do so fucking poorly that I have no idea why it still shouldn't have killed the fuck out of him in that moment.
Well, I mean, just going from this
it's
version
93
of
million
vampires,
miles away. It can't hurt you.
just like legit though, right? Like it's this version of vampires, and one thing I do think does help it is no other vampire reacts to the sun. No other vampire is thrown off or hurt or damaged by the sun. It is only Dracula. To the point where we've got what I think is a good example of this on just like all the superstitions. When Jonathan meets one of Dracula's brides, and I really like how the concept of a bride was handled in this. When Jonathan meets them and he holds up the cross, and we see that it has an effect on Dracula. But this fucking poor woman who's just been held in a box and just become a vampire, she doesn't give a shit like what that is. So she just like holds it, attacks him. I imagine she could walk out in daylight just fine. Because the whole point of this is every single thing that Dracula thought was going to kill him is just mental projection that he's had throughout all this time. All of it is bullshit, and like again, is probably why he kept wanting to make other vampires, because he probably would have been like he would have found out. So like and it is one of those things, right, where it's like the superhero question is Superman doesn't know he's immune to bullets until he gets shot the first time. Like, how do you test that shit, right? How do you risk it?
Yeah, I don't know. It felt so forced, because when you do that, it undermines the whole like plot, because then he's just invincible. And then again, even after all that, I don't understand why. I don't like the idea that any two characters who have a dynamic of like hero and villain kind of thing are just secretly wanting to fuck. Like, I really don't like that take 100% of the time. I like it in some cases. Like, I like that Joker wants to fuck Batman. I really like that one. I don't like the idea that Lex Luthor wants to fuck Superman. I don't. It doesn't work. I don't like the idea that Cheetah wants to fuck Wonder Woman. I don't. It doesn't work. And I don't like the idea that Van Helsing wants to fuck Dracula, or vice versa. I really don't. It doesn't work.
Well, for Dracula, I would argue, and vampires in general, it fits a lot better than any of the examples you've listed before. especially with her being a nun and like all of that going on, and the fact that she's the one person that can keep like. I think vampires are always inherently sexual, at least the the modern conception of them. So
it goes back to Bram Stoker's book.
Yeah, exactly. Any conception of Dracula is like, it's not necessarily that Van Helsing and everything wanna fuck Dracula. It's just like Dracula wants to fuck everything that interests him in this. Like, he wants to fuck Jonathan. He does fuck Jonathan. Dracula wants to fuck Lucy. Dracula wants to fuck the old woman on the boat. Like, Dracula wants to fuck everyone. Like, he wants to drug the like. It's his nature. It's how he's fascinated by people. He's gotten to the point where he's very open and all about that. And I think it fits her character that she'd be attracted to him because, I mean, it's fucking Dracula. His whole deal is that he's meant to be the ultimate seducer. But then at the same time, it's like one of those... I don't know. I do think it's not handled completely well, but like if I'm going to buy any... the villain wants to fuck the hero wants to fuck the villain. I think a Dracula story is like the number one place to do that.
And again, I think you're 100% right in concept. I think it fails in execution. I think that is the problem with this entire final episode of the series is there's so many good concepts there. Undeniably, they're great concepts. Stephen Moffat is like the king of the take. Right, like that is his thing, right? Like he posted on a Doctor Who forum years ago. He posted on a Doctor Who forum years ago, like, oh, maybe the Doctor's called the Doctor because he's been time traveling, and so the name doesn't mean anything. It's what the Doctor is the reason we have doctors. Like that's his whole thing. And then he goes years later and he writes that fucking episode, right? Like that's he is the guy with like the take. And this whole series feels like a take on Dracula that are really, really cool, really brilliant ideas. And the ultimate take on Dracula, that he fears death and that's what actually makes him weak, I think is a really interesting idea. I do not buy that what we see of the character in this series is willing to commit suicide after he realizes that about himself.
Yeah, that ending conceit, I think you really could have just left it. Is she beats Dracula by breaking Dracula, and he's still alive at the end of it, and then you can do a season 2. And like, where does Dracula go if you let him survive after the book? Like where his death is a spiritual one, where his concept is a thing, and now you've got this invincible character, but someone who doesn't really want to do this anymore because he just had his entire perception of himself completely shattered. Like, that's a fucking interesting character I want to see go. I do think killing him immediately after that in a self-sacrifice does come off as hollow. It does come off as kind of stereotypical and cheap. Where it would have been a lot more powerful if just end that fucking series with her dead and he's just fucking standing in the sunlight looking out the window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the thing for me. The idea is more powerful than the idea of the sun is the thing that hurts him, not the sun itself. I think that's great, but again, that's the end of an episode, not like the part of the end of the episode. Like, that's the thing for me. So many of these moments feel like they're meant to be like these big revelations, and you pack too many of them together too quickly, and it just starts to feel like just a hodgepodge mess of a series.
And I do think what's indicative of that is Moffat's gone in interviews to say that he's admitted this as a self problem, but he also sees it as a strength. And I think it's got 50-50. It definitely feels it here. As he's like, well, at the end of the 50th Doctor Who anniversary, I set up that we're going to be the next 50 years of Doctor Who is going to be about trying to find Gallifrey. It's like, I'm going home now instead of running away. And we set it up. And immediately the next script writing session I had, it's like, well, why are we waiting? Let's just do it. He's like, whenever I think something's exciting, I just want to do it immediately. I don't like saving things. I'm just because I want to do the most, because if I don't do the most excited thing that's in my head right now, I feel I'm being disingenuous, and I feel like that's really, really good for someone as smart as that, with so many good ideas, to get them out all as possible. And I think the fact that his Doctor Who is like fucking littered with just like $1 million concepts that he just fucking throws out casually. But I also think that's the problem, man, is these are $1 million concepts. You're throwing them out casually.
Not everyone can be a millionaire. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. Like, it's just, that is his problem as a writer, is he's got these really strong, really brilliant ideas that are super, super powerful. But then they lose their weight when you use so many of them so back to back. The idea that Lucy is the bride that Dracula waited 500 years to find. I love it. I love that idea. That Lucy, like, Dracula's in London in the book, and he could feed on literally anyone, but he keeps going to Lucy for reasons. I think it improves on the original. Like, he's specifically courting Lucy as a bride.
Because she gave him consent.
Mm-hmm.
In what has been a life of rape. Which is like really, really fucking interesting for vampires, and all the things connotated with them, and growing Dracula as a character. But then like it's left at that, and then we move on to the next thing. We don't sit with that for as long as we should be.
No, exactly that. And so that's just kind of, you know, this goes back to my why I like the Davies run of Doctor Who more than the Moffats. It's like, Moffat's probably a better writer than Russell T Davies, but like when Russell T Davies like he hit really well. He knew how to save that punch, make it matter. Whereas Moffat, he hits you left and right and center constantly, but they all feel weaker in comparison. You know, if we were to use like a boxing ring match, it's like Moffat's the guy on the other end of the rope-a-dope. You know, it's like, yeah, he just beat the shit out of you for like a solid 2 minutes, but that was everything he had, and you're actually not that beat up from it. So, because you got hit with too much. Whereas you need like the big haymaker hit that like other writers know how to deliver, where it's like they might not get you every single time, but like when it's gonna hit, it'll matter. And I think that's the problem with Moffat as a writer. And again, maybe it's unfair. Obviously, Gatiss is on this too. His name's even first.
Yeah, Gatiss. This is definitely more Gatiss's baby. If that informs anything, just because like he's done fantastic documentaries on horror. He's done a Dracula documentary for this, like, and he's talked about like, if Doctor Who is Moffat's thing, like, Margate grew up on Dracula. He grew up on the Hammer horror movies. All of that is just his fucking crack. So this was definitely his baby. But again, they're almost like our fucking dynamic, because anything they've written together is just equal parts, both of them. Like, it's inseparable to be able to tell which one wrote what, because they probably both fucking came up with it at the same time. yeah, like, that's the thing, is I know Moffat as a writer from watching all the Doctor Who I did with him. Like, I know how he delivers a thing. I know his style, and this is his style. And so if maybe Gatiss is the one that's like really pushing for the Dracula project in the Sherlock format, and like he had the ideas of doing certain things based on the book, maybe he's the one like, no one ever does the fucking boat. Let's do like a whole episode that's just the boat. Maybe that's him, right? And then Moffat's the one like, okay, but also in the boat, we're in the castle, in the mindscape. Yeah, that's 100% how that went down, man. You're right.
It's funny, you compare you and I dynamics. It's like exactly that, but the opposite, because you're the one that's like, maybe we should go with like a mindscape.
Legit.
Yeah, that shit's... Okay, anyway. So yeah, I feel bad for kind of ragging on so much of it, because I really do enjoy the first 2 episodes super hard. And, you know, if not for the end of the second episode, the very last scene of the second episode, that's just a really good 3-hour Dracula movie. You know, he gets beaten before he gets to London. It's fine. He had the misfortune of meeting Van Helsing earlier.
He brought his destruction with him.
Mm-hmm.
If he just left it, he would have done it. He would have been fine, but he was too interested. Like, again, you're right. Like, it's to be fair, this fucking, you could end this at either episode 1 or 2, and they work just fine as standalone if you just cut away a little bit, mm-hmm. As just like the one-off stories. All of that, I think, does speak to the strength of it. But at the same time, like, as much as we are ragging on it, I think there's been more of a engaging with the work, because like you can never say a Moffat thing is fucking simple or undercooked or he hasn't thought about it. It does remind me a lot about how Grant Morrison writes, and I think like people have done entire fucking threads on Twitter which are fantastic of like comparing the Green Lantern to Grant Morrison, to Stephen Moffat's Doctor Who tenure, and like all the fucking callbacks that Morrison's doing as a huge Doctor Who fan, to how Moffat writes stuff. They feel very similar in that way. I definitely think Morrison's a more apt, like more, if he's like level 50, Morrison's like level 75, level 80, just in terms of being able to like seed things and let things play out a little bit longer. I'm not sure if that's just from the difference between TV and comic book mediums, but what have you. So there's always something to engage with Moffat. There's always something to dissect, and Gators. There's always something to get into, and it's why the flaws do stand out a little bit more, because they often are the things that are sullying what would otherwise be like all-time classic, like all-time great, all right, that's it, that's your Dracula for the rest of the time kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly that. Like, this is such a solid take. It's just, I guess this is like the advantage of the novel, right? Is the novel is really attractive because it's a completed piece that comes out all at one time, and a writer will spend a very long time on it with virtually no restrictions. It's, you know, that's why, like, a lot of writers, they want advances on a novel, because it commits them to the project, it financially frees them up to be committed to the project, and it's something to work on just without a deadline. So you get a completed vision. It comes out, by and large, when you're ready for it to come out, after you get to a certain level in the industry, right? Whereas this feels like every problem that you have with it, even if you're like me, where I don't necessarily like some of the takes, and you kind of convinced me that like the sun thing works a bit better, in concept at least, than what I feel did in the episode itself. But like, the novel could have been produced and it's just the written word, and it could be just a completed piece without, you know, a single vision, completed piece without any kind of restrictions based on deadline or media or stuff like that. I think that's kind of the appeal to it, and that's probably like why the Dracula novel's so goddamn strong still all this time later. Maybe the next Geeky Gentleman Horror Month we gotta review the Dracula novel.
That could be fun.
Yeah, I've never done a full-on novel review on Geeky Gentleman before.
I mean, you fucking opened up the floodgates for that. I've got a fucking Superman novel with its fucking name on it that we're gonna do, so that's up to you.
If there's an audiobook, I'll do it. I
there is.
have a really bad habit of not being able to finish a novel, but I can finish an audiobook in like a day, it feels like. I was fucking listened to the Darth Maul Shadowhunter. It wasn't very good, but I listened to it all in like almost one night.
Very nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd be down for that. The other one I want to review, if we're talking about perspective novels, is I really want to do Old Man of the Sea one day. Yeah. But otherwise, I don't know. Is there anything else we want to talk about with this?
I think we've done a bit of a gambit here. My only thing then is following this, because we have seen Dracula, Sherlock, Doctor Who, all the biggest British things. Are there any other things, like even given the critiques you have with Moffat, where would you like to see him go next? Are there any other fictional characters you think would, even if there are flaws, it would be worth it just to see what he'd bring to it?
That's a good question. I would like to see Moffat do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That could be good.
Yeah. I think that like you've seen him do Holmes, you've seen him do Dracula. So he knows how to do like this character in the modern day kind of thing. And I don't even think you'd keep the modern day. I think it would be cool to see him just do it, set in Victorian era and shit. And just do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I think that could be really, really cool. From Moffat, I think he would, because it's his opportunity to have the take on all the characters, and he'd be able to get a million of them in at one time without having to do too many takes on top of the things for each individual character. So it might actually play to his strengths a little bit.
Yeah, spreading out the load a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. So you're getting a lot for each character as opposed to too much from any one. That could maybe be a cool thing for him. How about you? What do you think would be a good character to see him tackle?
I'd really like to see him do something with Sandman. Morpheus
Sandman, okay.
Yeah. I think, or just anything to do with the dreaming and the endless, like, just fucking... Because, I mean, he brought Neil Gaiman on to do Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Neil Gaiman should bring him on to do...
They've been courting Neil to do some kind of Sandman television series or movie or something since the book was still being published monthly. Uh-huh. Neil Gaiman, did an interview about Sandman at one point, and he was like, I used to be, in the room with the big executive with the tie who didn't know anything about me or my work, and there was, an assistant who did, and they're really impressed to see me, and now I'm in the room with the person who's a big fan of my work and is really impressed to see me. So if anything's going to happen, it's more likely to happen nowadays than it was back then. And so, that's all well and cool and great. Part of me thinks that I don't trust anyone else to write Sandman, which is weird. But, have I talked about the Neil Gaiman, Sam Keith, Morpheus design thing with you?
Yes, about how it looks like Neil Gaiman, but it wasn't based on him.
Yeah, it just happened that way. And there's so much stuff around Morpheus and Sandman that's just it feels like it was meant to be at a very particular moment in time, and trying to force it isn't gonna work. Which is actually a change of opinion I've had, because I used to say, I think Morpheus is a character who just demands to exist and kind of is using others to create himself. But then I see other people write Sandman and they don't do it well. Morrison's the only other... I don't know, Morrison and Dini. I guess Dini kind of gets Sandman. Though Dini, I guess, just gets more death. People do death just fine. They get death. Morpheus seems to really only be... I shouldn't say Morpheus, because Daniel is technically the one Morrison writes. Dream only seems to be got by Gaiman and Morrison. Everyone else seems to fuck up.
Which is why I'd want to see Moffat, because I put him in that mad British bastard category. He's on that tier of he's not one of my favorites, but I definitely put him in the exact same tier in terms of just fucking genius, right? As a writer, just absolute genius. And these guys will just get characters. So I guess one of those things where I just...
Goku.
Oh my god. The take. I can't even imagine it. But it's one of those things where all three of them, I think, complement each other so well and are very reverential. And I think the only ones they haven't met is I'm not sure if Gaiman and Moffat have actually met Morrison. He's kind of sheltered.
I'm pretty sure Morrison and Gaiman have met. Pretty sure, yeah, because I mean, Morrison used Daniel in his Justice League run, and I don't think he would have done that without at least the okay from Gaiman.
Yeah, but like that's the thing, right? It's like, is there an okay, or is there like a physical, like, because Moffat and Gaiman are actually friends. So that's the difference I'm making as well. And that's why I feel like, say they were going to do a Sandman show, is Gaiman's head writer, Moffat showrunner. I think would be a really good dynamic.
Sorry, I'm just curious now.
Oh no!
Google imaging Moffat and Morrison. Yep, there's a picture. There's several pictures of them together.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So that's it. Gaiman, this needs to be the fucking middleman.
Yeah, and then I'll have fun image with fucking Grant Morrison, Neil Gaiman, and Alan Moore with his serpent god in the center. I'm not sure who the other two guys are out to the side. That's one of them's wearing a top hat and has a big beard, and one of them just looks like a fucking dude. There's nothing distinguishing about him whatsoever.
Top hat guy might be Warren Ellis.
Maybe I could see it. I'm not sure who the other one would be.
Mark Millar.
Mark Millar. Yeah, just like the one that's least distinguishable or interesting, just hanging out on the side. That sounds about right.
That's the fucking apt description if I ever heard one. Ouch.
It's like, yeah. I don't know what happened with Morrison and Millar. They had a falling out at some point.
It's a legendary thing. It's a legendary thing.
I need to look into it at some point. All right. So I think that's it for Dracula. Sorry, we kind of got into British author, comic book author discussion there.
You are what you eat, my friend. Dracula got a bite of any of these people, we'd all be doomed.
Oh, I've long maintained that all of Grant Morrison's bodily fluids are like class 9 hallucinogens.
he the same way that it's just like he wrote All-Star Superman. He's like he got it because he supercharged his cells a long time ago.
No, I just like to imagine like Grant Morrison goes to the gym and like he works out and like sweats on the bench and then like leaves without wiping it down by accident because of course he would never do it on purpose. And then someone else sits down and they just like have to be rushed to the hospital because they just start immediately tripping balls just on contact with his sweat. That's the much less crude
his
video.
blood's completely clean, so it's like a mystery. It's like, wow, it's because you can't detect fifth-dimensional blood.
And then the much like cruder version of that is like Grant Morrison's wife really doesn't like to swallow because it just makes her trip like crazy.
You had to.
You gotta go for the naughty version. You gotta go for the naughty version. Oh. Anyway, all right. So what do we want to rate Dracula as? Why don't you go first? I'm curious.
Well, for this,
hold on. Before you go, let me ask you this. You at the beginning of this said you were much more there for it with like some of the twists and turns and takes that it has. Did this discussion like alter that for you at all?
Not really. Because I have been seeing a lot of similar, thankfully not as well articulated as how you've done it, but a lot of similar thoughts have been, while I've been watching it, I've been reacting to and seeing. So I have had a little bit longer to kind of settle in on my take. But I definitely think you've made me understand those ones a little bit more, even if I still don't particularly... Like, it still doesn't affect how if I go back and rewatch this, I'll still probably enjoy just the same. I don't know.
Okay.
We could do.
All right. Sorry, so go ahead. I was just curious, because you definitely, like, made me like it a bit more, but I still don't think I'd ever rewatch it because of the problems I have with it. But, like... You made me see what's there to appreciate a little bit more.
Well, I'm happy to do that because again, it's always nice to just like something. It's always awful just being like, oh, watch this, fucking 3 hours of just fucking garbage. But yeah, like I said, I'm much more on board with this. Moffat's wacky shenanigans and Gatus's equally wacky plot activities, always up my alley. I'm very thankful this happened. Saddened it probably won't ever get any form of continuation, because I would have liked to see at least like one more season out of this from this creative pair, because I do think like Sherlock certainly hit its stride in its second season for me, and that's where it kind of peaked. So I would have liked to see this kind of go on more. But other than that, I do think this is a really good watch. Even if you're a Dracula fan, I recommend you just at least check it out. You won't waste your time. You'll be coming back with some thoughts. If this conversation, and then you still haven't watched it and you listen to this conversation, and you've been spoiled and all these things, still just give it a watch, just because it is... we didn't talk more about the direction, but it is shot really well, and there's a lot of practical effects here. The wolf thing was all practical, like all of that stuff.
They actually killed a wolf. And
No, I mean, well, that's what you have to watch and find out, my spooky friends. But yeah, all of this I thought was just really good, but just a couple of nagging things that could have been tightened up to make this like an all-timer. As it stands, though, I definitely do think this is probably my favorite adaptation of Dracula. Although I'll probably be the hot take and say there's not that many good ones to choose from. But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy this. So I'm going to give it, on that note, 4 out of 5 wolf carcasses. No. 4 out of 5 fucking beautiful girls, because holy fuck.
Nice. Yeah, for me, I did. It's as much as I rag on the third episode, it's because of like a disappointment with how good the first two are. So I think I'm gonna give this 3.5 out of 5 fly's eyes. Kind of gives that expression, fly's eyes, a completely different perspective when the fly's like crawling around in the back of his eyeball. Yeah. Okay. I kind of sort of had a topic, and then we got an offer from someone, so I kind of want to think of a topic that's going to suit them a little bit better. So I think I'm going to wait, and we'll just do kind of a mystery topic episode for next week, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the champion of the press, but maybe not the only one.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.